Today is Wednesday, August 26th, 2015. We are interviewing Gwen Diehl
Yes.
at the Illinois State Library. Gwen is 61 years old, having been born on June 25th, 1954. My name is Sue Burkholder, and I will be the interviewer. So Gwen, for the recording, could you please state what war and branch of service you served?
I was in the United States Army, and I served during Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and I also entered during the end of the Vietnam era.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's just start with, would you please just tell me a little bit about yourself, like where you were born and
I was born in Aledo, Illinois, over in Mercer County, up south of the Quad Cities on the Mississippi River. And I am a preacher's kid, and being a Methodist minister's kid, we traveled a lot, and so I lived in quite a few towns, mostly in western Illinois. At the time that I graduated from high school, we lived in East Moline, and I joined the service from there.
very good. And how old were you when you joined?
17,
17. Oh my goodness.
just turned 18.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about your, well, you said your father was a minister. What about your mother?
Mom was a stay-at-home mom. When we were in the Quad Cities, she did training to be a respiratory therapist, but it never worked out. She developed Parkinson's shortly after that and wasn't able to do it. I'm the second of 7 kids, and my oldest sister, I joined first. My oldest sister joined after me and went into the Air Force, and then 2 of my other sisters joined the Army, and my brother joined the Marine Corps.
Great military family. Wonderful. And before you entered the service, kind of what was your life like then? What were you doing? School and
Just high school. I think I was typical in high school. I wasn't athletic or anything. It was more working in the library, doing theater props and costumes and things like that. So had a few extracurricular activities, and then church activities.
all right. What was the highest rank that you achieved?
I was a sergeant first class, E7.
Okay. Were you ever in the Guard or?
No.
No? Okay. And why did you choose the Army?
Well, being the second kid, my older sister was already in college, and it just seemed difficult to have 2 kids in college. And about the only thing I could manage was junior college. And at that time, junior colleges were real new, and it just felt like an extension of high school. And it didn't feel like the right thing to do. And besides that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So
All right. Let's see. What was it like when you left for basic? How was it for you, and then how was it also for your family?
my youngest sibling was my brother, and he was 6 when I joined. So there was a big age difference between us, and it was awful going to basic training because didn't know anybody, was so far from home, and um, it might just be women's basic training, but there was a lot of tears.
Oh, I bet there were. Okay. And how did you adapt when you were there, and after you'd been there a little bit, how were you feeling about it then?
Felt better after I'd been there for a while, and then as you get closer and closer to graduation, it's just a big pride thing.
Yeah.
That you're actually going to make it.
Right. Oh, cool. Very good. So after you went through the initial basic training, did that make you question everything you knew, about the military before you joined?
I don't think I knew anything about the military because my dad had been in before he was married and had us, and didn't have any real exposure to military people. It just seemed like the right thing to do. And then after you go through the basic training and everything, you're just sort of indoctrinated to the military family. So it it felt better going to AIT.
Mhm.
They sent me to Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is a garden spot.
Oh,
Yeah, and did basic training there, and then they sent me to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
mhm.
At the time that I was initially stationed at Fort Leonard Wood, my parents were in Quincy by then, so it was only about a 3-hour drive. So was able to come home for long weekends and things like that. So that made it a lot more tolerable.
And what did you study then when you went to advanced training?
Personnel and administration, and I trained to be a records specialist.
Cool. Let's see. And then where was your first assignment?
Well, my first permanent party was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and while I was there, after I was there a little over a year, I came down on orders for Germany. So married the guy that I was seeing, and we went to Germany. And we were stationed in Ulm, and it's on the Autobahn between Stuttgart and Augsburg. Um, and then that was in 1974. And in 1977, my son was born in the hospital in Augsburg. And then later that year, we came home. So we came home from Germany, and I was stationed then in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I worked at the MEPS station where the troops come to enlist, and I did enlistment paperwork and clerical things to get people's records started, and I also did test administration. And after 3 years there, I had another son who's born in Indianapolis, and we came down on orders again for Germany. So that time we went to Ansbach, and it's just west of Nuremberg in Germany, and was by then I was E5 and got promoted to staff sergeant at Ansbach and was the records section supervisor. So did a lot of things there, and an opportunity came available for me to do an inter-theater transfer and go to Heidelberg to the 1st Personnel Command. At 1st PersCom, I became subject matter expert for officer and enlisted evaluation reports and was the point of contact if people had questions. So I was the ombudsman for that. And I participated in some command post exercises while in Heidelberg, and those are more paper things where you deal with the subordinate commands and you pass paperwork about what a casualty or what personnel you need or logistical supplies and things like that. And I enjoyed that a lot. And then I had the opportunity to serve in the mobilization planning section. So I did war planning for a little over 4 years. When I came back to the States after that, I was sent to Fort Bliss, Texas, because my assignment manager decided I needed troop time. So he sent me to the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. And having come from staff positions, had not really been to the field because paper exercises are different than camping in a tent. So my first opportunity to go to the field was in 1990, and it was to do the manifest and deploy the squadron to Desert Storm or Desert Shield. So that was my first time in the field. But the things that I learned documentation-wise in Germany served the squadron well because I knew what kind of reports were going to have to go up and what kind of equipment we were going to need. Most of the cavalry officers and tankers didn't believe that we needed photocopy machines. You can't run an office without a copy machine. You can't run an office without computers. So we took a lot of things that other squadrons in the regiment didn't take, and then we became the source for blank forms and reams of paper and things like that. But it was interesting and was kind of cool that I was able to come up to what we needed.
Mhm. Oh, that's cool. Um, so even when you were as you were doing troop time, you were still in the support position?
Mhm.
And that, did you ever see uh, any fighting wartime, or were you always in a support position?
I did not. I was support squadron, but we were, I think, a mile and a half from the border with Iraq, and we were the support squadron for the tanks in the 1st Armored Division, 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. And we maintained the food and fuel and water and kept mail moving, things like that, to the regiment. When they moved across the border, we stayed in place, and then we pushed supply trains forward, and each day they would get a little further out. And so as I'm sitting in the headquarters truck listening, the radio transmissions become more and more faint. And so it was kind of scary. Um, and we just kept pushing, everything forward that we knew they would need. And, each truck would go out and he'd go a little bit further. And then one that he was, backing up would meet him, and they'd wave. And I'd get to find out how my troops were and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that would be, I think, difficult,
Yes.
not knowing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So how difficult was it for you to adapt to the whole, what do I say, culture of military life when you were there, as far as, the different sleeping arrangements, not, just the different way of doing things?
Right. It was total immersion. And when we went to Desert Storm, Desert Shield, excuse me, being tankers, they sleep on their tanks and they don't take tents. Well, I had 34 women in my squadron. We needed a tent. So we took GP medium tents, and my section was 3 women and 4 men, and we all shared the tent together. So you learn how to dress in your sleeping bag and, just how to get along. When we were there, we were in the desert because you have to have lots of room for tanks. And so I went out with the first wave, and we established the area that we were going to be in, figured out where latrines were going to be and where wash stations were going to be. And then I believe they had a contract with the local government, and they built plywood toilet shelters that were like a long bench with 3 holes, and it's screened in. And during the course of the operation, you could sit in there and talk to people outside. It was just interesting. The lavatory areas were also plywood. They had some kind of a metal reflective surface so you could sort of see what you looked like. And they had like a mixing bowl in it. You brought your own water in your jug, you poured it in there, and you took care of what you needed to take care of, and then you threw your water away and wiped it out for the next guy. The showers were 3 main showers, and so you could have a guy and a girl in the showers on each end and just agree to keep the one in the middle empty. But our guys in support squadron were pretty good, and if it was the women's time for the shower, then they didn't mess with us. They had a big tank on top that was supposed to warm the water, and it never did get up to body temperature, so that was not fun. One time they brought water out to us in these huge tanker trucks, and it had been used for some kind of fuel. And so when they put it in the tank, it contaminated all the water, and you smelled like diesel fuel for the rest of the time. So it was a choice of, do you take a shower in that, or do you wash in bottled water?
Wow. How about if you were out in the sand and that, how, just curious, how invasive was that into everything?
It was awful. It was very fine, almost like baby powder. And, after a while, you just made Adobe in your ears or something. It was horrible. And it took a while to get that out of your crevices when you got home.
Um, well, I know you weren't, you said you weren't actually in combat, but what about the folks that you took care of? How, were there many casualties? How did they do as far as that goes?
We had a couple of casualties. One of the troops died of natural causes, some kind of a brain aneurysm or something. And then we had a couple of friendly fire casualties. So that was pretty traumatic because the squadron was only, I believe, 1,200 people. So I knew my people, and so it was pretty difficult. Being in charge of personnel, I liaisoned with the Red Cross. So if somebody was having a family emergency here in the States, then we'd get the Red Cross message and we'd process them to return to the States to take care of the emergency and then hopefully return back to us. So being over there was even more close knit than being in the States because we're all the family we got, so.
Okay. How about friendships when you were in? I'm sure you developed some close friendships, and do you continue those?
Some of them I do, yeah. It's fun to catch up with the people that I served with and see where they've gotten to and keep an eye on them as they move through life. A lot of the troops that I served with were younger, so they're just now turning 40s and 45, and so they've just got their kids up to out of the house and starting to have kids married and grandkids and stuff. So it's a lot of fun to keep up.
And how do you correspond with them?
Well, we do some Facebook, and then some phone calls and just hard copy letters.
When you were uh, deployed, was how and I don't know exactly at that time, but did the ability to Skype and do those type of things, was that coming in to
No.
use much then? So it was before its time.
Right.
So it was more letters still.
Right. And back then, you didn't have cell phones, and if you did have a cell phone when you were at Fort Bliss, it wasn't an international cell phone like they do now. So when we first got there to establish our area for the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, AT&T brought out like a beer tent, and they put telephones in there, but they were payphones. So people had crazy phone bills because they could call collect and they didn't have to put money in the machine. And so then they got home and they've got these massive phone bills. So that was a learning experience. I think the difference now is everybody has phones and it's real-time communication, which could lead to problems. We thought it would lead to problems when we were there if people got on the phone, if something happened, and they're spreading the word. Sorry, I should have brought water. So we didn't have the same issues that they have now.
Mhm. Would one of these help?
I don't want to take yours.
Oh, no, it's fine. Here. I've got
Thank
two.
you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I was thinking about how social media and how the whole cell phone, FaceTime, communications have changed the face of how things, and like you said, it's like some things might get out before you really need them to.
Right.
Yeah,
It's so neat now because the kids can watch their children being born.
that's nice. Okay, well, what about entertainment and relaxation? What were your options and what were you able to do there?
We did intramural football, and it was our troop against the other troops, or our squadron would pick the best of ours, and then one of the tank squadrons would bring in a team, and so we'd have football. I got there the first part of September, in 1990. And so we were looking towards Thanksgiving. And I like to mother and I like to cook and things like that. So they let me go to the mess hall and cook Thanksgiving dinner with them. So that was cool. And, so we didn't have bottled gravy. We had homemade gravy, and things like that. And it was it was turkey roll, but it was still turkey.
Mhm.
And they brought in fresh fruit from Europe because I'm not sure what conditions fruit and stuff is when it comes from the market over there. So it was fun.
That's good. And well, what about the food? Speaking of food, how is it?
Uh, I think we were one of the first operations that used the MREs, the meals ready to eat.
Mhm.
And a lot of chickens gave their lives for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. They had a lot of different meals that were available in the MREs, but when those gave out, then they started using the tray rations that come from the mess hall, and it's like a large sardine can that's a 9 by 13, and it'll feed 20 people, I believe. We ate chicken cacciatore for about 3 weeks, 3 meals a day, and after a while, you didn't want that anymore. When all the chickens that had given their lives were gone, they got Denti Moore stew and things like that that are microwavable, but you could heat them up over there in their heating units. So we ate those for a while, and I still can't buy that stuff. But we didn't die from the food.
Just got a little bored with it after a while.
Oh, yes.
Sure. Um, okay, so what was your most memorable experiences while you were serving?
Being stationed in Germany, the ability to travel, and you could be in Holland in a couple of hours, and it was great. Or you could go to Austria and Switzerland, and it was just fantastic. The recreation services over there does tours at different times of the year, and we went on a bus tour from Ulm, Germany, over to Lourdes, France. And that was really interesting. Nothing I'd ever been exposed to was like that. And it was a military pilgrimage to Lourdes. So there were military people from all over the world that were there. And so that was really interesting. And, to see the people that come to the shrine, and then to meet all the military and stuff. And it was a lot of fun.
When you were back in Germany, since it was a separate or a different venue, what would you do for entertainment? I know you did the day trips or the trips, but what else would you do for entertainment and relaxation there?
The second time I was in Germany was at the beginning of the VHS tape thing. And so you could go and rent VHS tapes and do movies at home, or you could go to the movie theater, and movie theaters were still popular then. So you could go to the movies. And being on base, it wasn't expensive. So you could do that frequently. There were different sporting events and activities that would come in, and they do like a boxing night or something. And so other military people would come and do the boxing tour.
Mhm.
So you could do different things like that.
Were there entertainers that came like, all I can think of is Bob Hope way back in the
USO
day?
shows.
The USO shows, yes.
Yes. I did not see any USO shows when I was in Germany, but there were some when we were in Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
and seating and tickets were limited. So, our regiment got, I don't know, 40 positions or something. So they got to go and do that. They had a recreation center that was on the ocean. Um, no, it's not an ocean, it's a sea. Anyway, it's on the water and, sand and everything. But it wasn't like real resorty. It was a different kind of sand, and you got to take your boots off. And so sent troops to that.
Yeah.
Another time, General Schwarzkopf was gonna be in the area, and so we sent everybody back to the city where he was gonna be. And so some of the troops got to see him in person, and they enjoyed that.
Um, Tell me about any medals or citations you were awarded while you were in the service.
Okay. Um, I received the Army Commendation Medal when I was at Ulm, my first Germany assignment. And then when I went to the MEPS station in Indianapolis, I received the Joint Service Commendation Medal. And it's comparable, but it's for serving with all the services. So it was a little bit higher precedence. And then I received another uh, Army Commendation Medal when I was in Ansbach and when I left Heidelberg. While I was deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, when we returned, I was awarded the Bronze Star Medal. And that's equivalent to a Meritorious Service Medal, which I received when I retired from the service. So I got the Bronze Star Medal.
Nice.
That's the neatest one.
Very nice. So were you there when the war, and forgive me for not remembering exactly how
It's
that
okay.
worked, but were you there when it ended, or did you leave before that conflict ended?
No, we were there in country and we were still out along the border when they declared the ceasefire. And my troops were all above the border in Iraq. And at the time that we deployed over there, they were under the impression that there were landmines just random through the desert. So they required all the troops to go back out the way they went in. And my squadron, my regiment was out towards the west, and they just looped up and then across towards Kuwait. And then when they declared the ceasefire, they had to come back that way too. So they declared the ceasefire and said, okay, everybody's going home. And it was like, we're not done yet. And they said, no, you're going home. So we all went home. And it felt incomplete. But, you go where you're sent.
Yes. Let's see. What about, did you eat any local food? I'm
No,
sure you
not in
didn't.
Saudi.
Not in Saudi, but in
In
Germany?
Germany, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. German food was great. When we lived in Ansbach, we lived out in the local community and lived with an older family that are probably my age now. And they were more rural. And so they decided that I needed to be a good housefrau. So I learned to do German cooking, basic stuff. And one time we went together and bought a pig and butchered that. So that was interesting. But it was all different kinds of experiences that I hadn't had before. And it was just so cool to be part of their family.
And what would you say was your favorite food while you were there?
Oh.
Or two or three?
She could make schnitzel and dumplings, and the potato dumplings were good, but the bread dumplings were outstanding, and she could make gravy out of anything. And my skills are weaker now, but I enjoyed that stuff and cooking with her.
Let's see. What, when you were done there, then where did you go from there? Did you actually go home, or did you stay in longer, or
From Germany?
Germany? Not Germany, sorry.
Okay.
Desert
Fort
Storm.
Bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went back to Fort Bliss, and the commander of the regiment got promoted and he moved on. So we got a new commander of the regiment, and he decided that we needed to test our battle abilities. So we did 3 more rotations to the National Training Center after Desert Storm. National Training Center is by 29 Palms, California, and it's almost as desolate as the deserts around Fort Bliss. So it was awful. But it was an opportunity to excel.
And how did you keep, I mean, it sounds like you have a pretty good, positive um, thought about that. So how did you keep yourself from, I mean, how did you just keep up about it and keep going, I guess?
I was old, and it was kind of like Sergeant Mom. So, you got to stay up for the kids.
Mhm.
So you just do it.
Let's do it. All right. So since you left the military, what did you do after that? After you got out, how like first kind of immediately, what did you do, and then long term, what was your path?
Immediately after I got out, I came back to Taylorville, where my parents lived, to be nearer them after being gone for so long. And I wasn't sure if I'd be able to find a job or what kind of job I'd get. So I worked at Hardee's and fried chicken and did breakfast. And finally got a job after 3 months at the Vietnam Veterans Leadership Program. And it's a program that was started in the 80s by Ronald Reagan, and it was to help the returning Vietnam veterans adjust to life after the service and get meaningful employment. And so I helped veterans create their job applications for state employment. And after I did that for a while, they let me start doing bypass reviews. There's a system with the state called Rutan. And if at that time, if an agency wanted to hire a non-veteran and veterans had interviewed, then our organization, which was a contract under CMS, would go out and review the selected applicant and all the veterans that had interviewed, and then we'd write reports and submit them back to the agency and to CMS and let them know whether or not the veteran was better qualified than the non-veteran. So I did that for a little while, and then an opportunity came available to go and work at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And after I had been out for a while and figured out what Veterans Affairs was, that's where I wanted to be. So I started there as a computer data entry clerk. And I did that for about 9 months. And whenever any of the secretaries for the director or the assistant director were absent, they let me go and sit in their place. And so then when an administrative assistant position came open, I was able to go into that position. And that was my first state job, was as an admin assistant. I worked in a section that was responsible for the Illinois Veterans Homes. And so I learned a lot about the physical plant requirements for the veterans homes and some just broad general information about what's appropriate nursing care and what reports are required and things like that. And as the people that I worked under retired and moved on to save money, we just didn't fill their positions, and so their stuff would come onto my desk. And after a while, I was 4 people, and we have tried a couple of different positions to help alleviate that with more oversight over the nursing care at the homes coming from someone else, and then I kept the capital projects. So I've been able to do renovation and construction projects at the 4 veterans homes. And I did that until May, when Director Jeffries tapped me to be the chief of staff, acting chief of staff. So I was acting chief of staff for a couple of months, and then she appointed me last month to be permanent.
Very good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very good. Let's see. What about, since you've been back, are you a part of any veterans organizations?
Almost all of them. It's hard to be active in more than 1 or 2 at a time, but I belong to the American Legion and the VFW and AMVETS and 40 and 8 and Women's Overseas Service League and DAV. I think that's it.
And what do you enjoy? What activities or do you participate in with them that you enjoy the most?
I'm not a smoker or a drinker, so the smoking was a turnoff at first, but I would go to the meetings and participate in the activities and things when I could. Working a distance from home is more difficult, but trying to, at least be involved. In the 90s, I was commander of my American Legion post for a couple of years, and now I'm the finance officer at my post. And so I do that. At the department, we do a lot of recognition ceremonies and remembrance ceremonies for the veterans. And I've always stepped up to be part of the ceremonies and things. And so by doing that, I've gotten to meet a lot of veterans that talking to the veterans and learning their histories, it's like I must have slept through history because I missed so much. And so the organization that I dearly love that's gone is the Pearl Harbor survivors. But we still do recognition. And the other one that's fading is the American ex-prisoners of war. And those are the guys that were shot down, usually Army Air Force, shot down and taken prisoner and survived and came back, and such fantastic guys and so upbeat, just a lot of fun. The Pearl Harbor survivors, when they would come to any events, they'd wear their Hawaiian shirts and leis, and so they were just, all about the Hawaiian thing. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I got wrapped tight.
That's all right.
Another ceremony that I participate in is the Desert Storm Remembrance ceremony on the 28th of February. And we don't have a lot of families that come to that, but a lot of veterans support it. We had two kids from here in Springfield area that died in Desert Storm, and so their mothers were very active. One of the most horrible things that happened to me personally in Desert Storm was taking my troops out. We had to build a bunker with sandbags and stuff, and it was so pretty. And the commander came up and he kicked it and made it collapse. And I was livid because we'd worked so hard on this, and it just looked so cool. But it couldn't have withstood anything. When I got back here, I met the mother of a guy who died when his bunker collapsed. And that made it so much more real. And I'd like to find the commander and thank him. But anyway, one of the other guys, he's a Marine, and his tank was shot in a friendly fire incident. And his crew carried his body for 3 days so that he wouldn't be left up there. So those are like military lessons that I've learned after the fact. At the state fair, we do a memorial service for the KIA and KIA from Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom. And we just did that a week and a half ago. And we read the names of the casualties. And this year we did it to where we read the names of the service members for the families who are going to be present. And then we have a Civil Air Patrol troop that comes out, and then they participate in the ceremony, and And what they do is we have 2 vases of roses, and they will come across the front of the stage and lay a rose at the foot of the battlefield cross. That's the boots and the weapon and the helmet. This year, the governor wanted to participate, so we had it where the cadets would bring a rose to the governor. As I read the names, the family member would come up and the governor would present the rose. And they laid the rose. So it was a really neat ceremony. I'm sorry I'm messing up your tape.
You're fine. You're fine. Being in the military and war is not all about just fun, and it's not fun at all. That's not the right way to put it, but there are tears. That's okay. It's all right. Well, you've said that that you do keep up with some of your folks. Um, do you have opportunities to go to reunions or like meet in person type of events?
They have reunions, but it's more difficult. They're usually in the summer, and working and stuff. I haven't taken advantage of that, but it's a lot of fun to at least catch up with them, either on Facebook or on the phone or something.
Yes. Well, let's see. I know that your service and the experiences while you were in the service have affected your life. If you could just kind of, you know, I don't want to say wrap it up in a bow, but just give just a little bit. I'm sure it's huge, and we could probably be here for a long time
I'm sorry.
talking. No, you're absolutely fine. But what would you say? Just in, how it's maybe helped shape your life even. I know you've spoken a little bit about it, but what would you say to that?
I can't imagine who I'd be if I hadn't joined and if I hadn't stayed. After I got out and came back here, I went to college and went to Lincoln Land and UIS and graduated in 2000. I think the military gave me the opportunity to do that. I like to think I'm big and bad and tough, but I'm not. But I think the military made me the way I am.
So, I know you've already spoke to this a little bit, but what about life lessons that you've learned because of your military service, just in general?
I think it all goes back to leave no man behind. And I try to be that way still, even though it's not a battlefield, it's just life. But, to help the people that you can help be better, more rounded people. And I like to think I make a difference.
All right. Well, if you could give a message to leave for future generations who will either view or hear your interview, what would you say to them?
I think take advantage of every opportunity that you can, whether it be to join the military and serve that way, or to serve your community at home, or just to serve other people, either through your life, job, or your personal time by volunteering. I think it's really important to be there for others because you may need them to be there for you one day too.
Very good. Okay, do you have any last comments or anything you would like to share?
I don't know if it goes in this interview or not, but the the most exciting thing that I've gotten to do since I've been out was I was selected to serve on the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Women's Advisory Committee. And I served on that for a little over 5 years. And we went out and toured Veterans Administration hospitals, and we met with Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and we helped push legislation to help women veterans and veterans in general um, be able to use the services that are available to them and to get publicity out about the services that are available so that they're able to take advantage of the benefits that they've earned.
Very good.
Thank
Well,
you.
Gwen, I want to thank you for your time, for coming for this interview, and just for opening your heart and sharing. And thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. You're welcome.